Visher is almost perfect, but there was one decision they made that I absolutely hated. But that is a spoiler, so I'll talk about that at the very end with a spoiler warning. This will otherwise be spoiler free. This was released in 2024. It's directed and written by Isaac Rodriguez, and we have a cast including Mandy Rubio and Rahul Chakraborty, and they play Ruth and Harry respectively. And this is about a scammer. And he manages to get into Ruth's account because she gives him the details. She was very convincing. And he actually, because he hacks into her account or gets into her account with her details, he's able to see the cameras that are installed in her home, including the camera on her laptop. And this means that we get to see her throughout the film. And of course, he gets to see her. And then honestly, pretty terrifying things start to happen. It takes a lot to scare me when it comes to horror films because I'm a big horror fan. The more I watch, the harder it is to scare me, which is, I think, a pretty common experience for horror fans. But I was genuinely disturbed for multiple reasons. I was disturbed from the very, very beginning because I'm sure, like many people, I find scammers to be the scum of the earth. They make my skin crawl. So just immediately, the atmosphere is horrible, but in a way that's obviously entertaining within the context of the film, but it's still really horrible. What I found quite interesting, though, for me at least, I don't want to say I liked the scammer, but I didn't hate him. He seemed almost human. Whereas it can be hard to think of scammers as humans because they are just disgusting, horrible, nasty entities. But there was something about him from the very beginning that made me see just a little bit beyond the scammer and just a little bit into who he was outside of being a scammer. And obviously as the film progresses, things get darker and more scary. And I don't want to say any more than that at the moment. I will, with a spoiler warning, discuss how things progress towards the ending because that's where I didn't like it. But up until that, I'd say literally the last couple of minutes, I was loving every second of this because it's absolutely terrifying, not just with the horror aspect that's unfolding through the laptop, through the webcam and the other cameras, but also because of just this nasty atmosphere of online scammers and how absolutely disgusting they are and how real and how terrifying that can be. So I think it combined several different elements to really cause a lot of different types of horror. There is the fear of the jump scares and, again, things that are unfolding through the camera, which I don't want to spoil any more than that. And then we have just this nasty, slimy scammer who, again, as I said, there was something about his character that he had something about him that was, I think it was just the fact that I could see him as being a human and seeing just ever so slightly beneath the surface of being a scammer. And I think that worked really well. I would never say I got to the point where I liked the character, but I think we, in my opinion, get to see just a slight glimmer of hope that there's somebody underneath that disgusting surface of being a scammer. And I think that was very, very well done. Ruth as a character is very likable, not the most interesting or well developed, but she works very well as a character nevertheless. The performances are absolutely amazing. And for a film that doesn't have a lot of variety in the characters, we basically don't have any other characters. I say that because it's not 100% true, but for the bulk of the film, all we have are the scammer and Ruth. And we spend most of the time in the room with the scammer looking through the camera at Ruth. So there's not a lot of variety in the locations, but it still held my attention from start to finish. Even though there was one aspect that I didn't love, it still held my attention all of the way through. I found it to be very atmospheric, quite terrifying at times. And I guess I can now say I 100% recommend it, apart from the last few minutes, and I'll talk about that now with a spoiler warning. I will give away what happens at the end, because I was honestly devastated. So this is a big, big spoiler for something that I think, in my opinion, was a really bad decision. I'd also love to know, if you watch the film, what messages are you getting from this? As I think there are a couple of takeaways, and these are just purely my readings of the film. I'm not 100% sure what the main takeaway should be, and I will discuss those thoughts now. So, big, big spoiler at the very end. our scammer decides to go to Ruth's house because he can see all of these horrific things unfolding on the camera, and he's clearly formed an attachment with her, and he wants to save her. And I actually had a thought at the very beginning of the film. Again, this is everything I'm saying now is a big spoiler. At the beginning of the film, there was something Ruth said, and I don't know what it was. I didn't write it down because I quickly dismissed it, but I thought at the very beginning, she knows he's a scammer. But then we moved on from that, and I stopped thinking that. And then I was thinking, okay, well, maybe that's not what's happening here. Maybe these horrific things are actually just our scammer's subconscious playing tricks on him for being such a vile person. That's not what was happening either. We actually circle back to my initial thought. Ruth did know that he was a scammer. And I don't hate that. That's not the bit that I don't like. But the scammer goes to her house, and it was all an act. Again, I don't hate this. She was looking for him for, I think she said, 2 years. Because of something pretty awful that happened. I won't spoil that part of it. And she finally managed to track him down. I don't know how difficult that would be. I imagine it would be very difficult to track down a specific scammer. And this is where some of the messages are unclear for me with what they're trying to deliver. So I'll tell you what happens at the end. Then I'll say I'm not sure what the main message is, if there even is one. They get into a big fight, and it seems like she's about to kill him. And he manages to put his arm around her neck, and she dies. And I was waiting for her to have played dead to get him off her and then turn around and kill him. And she didn't. She died. And at the very end of the film, he's lying in bed with her and having dinner with her. But obviously this is just her corpse because she's dead by this point. And I absolutely detested that ending. I think there's a good message with it, and I will, again, talk about that in a second. But I absolutely hated that. How dare the scammer be the one who get away with his life? Not that I'm saying we should go and murder scammers. I'm not saying that at all. But in this scenario, if somebody had to die, I didn't want it to be her. So I really, really found that to be really frustrating. But we could say, and I'd love to know if this was the intention or if it's just my reading, but the message there could be, if you are in a situation similar to Ruth, don't go looking for the scammer yourself, because it could cost you your life. And I fully support that message. I don't think anybody should ever go looking for somebody who has scammed them or scammed somebody they know, because it's dangerous. Get the authorities involved instead. By all means, do what Ruth did and do digging to find their location or something. I don't know if that's dangerous, but don't go and approach them, because as we see with Ruth, it could cost you your life. You might not come out of this alive. However, on the flip side, the message is also saying, well, if you're a scammer, you might be alive anyway, and you can kill the person you're scamming if they try and get to you. And I don't love that message. I don't think that message is quite as strong, but the fact that our scammer got away with all of this, I think is horrendous, and it doesn't sit right with me at all. So I just really hate that ending. But if their message was, don't go after the scammer in person because you might not make it out alive, I think that's a great message. I think that's really, really important. But also, having the scammer going through all of this and then surviving, if somebody had to die, I don't think it was the right person. Maybe they both could have died. Maybe that could have delivered both messages. Don't be a scammer because it could cost you your life, but also don't go after a scammer because it could cost you your life. At the end of the day, the main message should always be, don't be a scammer. I think that's a pretty strong takeaway regardless. Visher is a brilliant film. I loved almost every second of it. Genuinely very, very scary, both with the things unfolding on the camera and also just every time we were in the room with the scammer, it just felt disgusting and really made my skin crawl, and it worked very well, very, very well. So I enjoyed it a lot. Didn't like the ending. If they're going for the messages I've discussed, then fair enough. I can see that. But I stand by the fact that I think maybe they both should have died. Then we could have had two strong messages of don't be either person in this scenario, because it's not going to end well. But that aside, I thought it was a brilliant film and very happy to recommend it. Genuinely loved 99.9% of it. It was still a really great experience.